Hello everyone, welcome to the Redframe. Before we begin the review, I have an embarrassing confession to make. I hate horror movies. Seriously. This isn't a joke or a YouTube persona, I am genuinely easily terrified. A single, well-timed jump scare can disrupt my sleep schedule for a week. My heart pounds in my throat, my palms sweat, and my logic goes out the window. After watching this film, I am certain I will be paranoidly checking behind my shower curtain every time I enter the bathroom for the foreseeable future. Yet, like a moth to a flame, I keep returning to this darkness. I am addicted to that terrifying adrenaline, to triggering that fight or flight response from the safety of an armchair. And in the history of cinema, few franchises can feed this toxic addiction as purely and brutally as this one. Anyway, we need to talk about the state of the modern sequel. When 28 years later hit theaters last summer, the anticipation was suffocating. We were promised a triumphant return to a franchise that redefined the zombie genre in the early 2000s. And what did we get? Well, if we're being honest, it was a film that didn't exactly stick the landing. It had superb performances, sure, but it was marred by a disjointed narrative, plot conveniences that strained credulity, and an ending that left most of the audience scratching their heads rather than on the edge of their seats. So, when the direct sequel, The Bone Temple, was announced for immediate release, skepticism was high. Not only were we coming off a mixed bag of a predecessor, but the director's chair was handed to DaCosta. Now, DaCosta is a talented filmmaker, but given that she recently helmed The Marvels, a film that was chewed up and spit out by the superhero industrial complex, expectations were, to put it mildly, managed. But here is the twist that perhaps none of us saw coming. The Bone Temple is good. Actually, it is pretty damn good. It isn't just a salvage job. It is a film that takes the shaky foundation of the previous entry and builds something grotesque, lyrical, and surprisingly compelling on top of it. While it may not be the movie of the year, and it certainly feels more like a massive expansion pack to the previous film rather than a standalone entity, it succeeds where it counts. It delivers a horror experience that is confident, visually striking, and anchored by some of the most unhinged performances we have seen in the genre. To understand The Bone Temple, you have to understand its strange position in the franchise. It is marketed as a separate film, but narratively, it is the second half of a whole. Written by Alex Garland, who scripted the original 28 Days Later, and directed by DaCosta, this film picks up the baton immediately where the last one dropped it. If the first film in this new trilogy was about the initial shock of the new world, The Bone Temple is about the psychosis of living in it. It mirrors the relationship between 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later. The first entry was stylized and infused with Danny Boyle's unique, frantic flair. This entry, however, settles into a slightly more normal narrative rhythm, but normal is a relative term here. We are no longer just running from the infected, we are sitting with the survivors and watching the rot set in. The story shifts focus significantly. While we technically follow the events after Spike's capture, this isn't really Spike's movie anymore. He is present, mostly as an observer, but the narrative weight has been transferred to two titans of acting who are given permission to go absolutely feral. Ralph Fiennes as Dr. Ian Kelson and Jack O'Connell as the terrifying antagonist, Jimmy. Let's start with Dr. Ian Kelson. We met him in the last film, but here, we truly move into his headspace. Kelson is a former general practitioner who has spent the last 28 years of the apocalypse building the titular Bone Temple. This isn't a metaphor. It is a literal structure constructed from human remains, intended as a requiem and a tribute to the dead. Now, obviously, architecture made of femurs and skulls isn't usually a sign of sound mental health. Kelson has gone kooky, to put it lightly. But Ralph Fiennes plays him with a fragility that is mesmerizing. He isn't threatening in the traditional sense. He is a man whose mind has fractured under the weight of grief and isolation. However, the most fascinating aspect of Kelson's arc in this film is his relationship with the alpha zombie, a character referred to as Samson. Kelson has been experimenting on this infected creature, repeatedly tranquilizing him. But these aren't just cold, clinical experiments. Kelson starts to see a ray of light in the monster. There is a sequence in the third act that sums up the surreal nature of this movie perfectly. We see Kelson and this massive infected creature dancing. It sounds ridiculous on paper. It sounds like something that should fail. But Fiennes commits to it with such fearlessness that it becomes one of the most poignant moments in the franchise. It represents the intersection of the character's insanity and the world's insanity. He believes he is curing the rage, or at least, finding humanity within it. It fundamentally alters who he is, transitioning him from a crazy hermit to a tragic figure seeking redemption in a monster. On the other side of the coin, we have the film's true darkness. If Kelson represents the madness of isolation, Jack O'Connell's Jimmy represents the madness of society. We were introduced to the adult version of Jimmy at the end of the last movie in a startling fashion, but here, he takes center stage. Jimmy leads a gang of younger men, all of whom are also called Jimmy. They are a murderous cult who have never known a sane world. To them, brutality, sadism, and torture are not evil. They are baseline normal. Jack O'Connell delivers a performance that deserves awards attention, even if horror rarely gets it. He is magnetic. At times, he is paternal and funny. At other times, he is quiet and self-reflective. And then, in the blink of an eye, he becomes brutally sadistic. He has convinced his followers that he is the son of the devil, carrying out his father's plan to punish the world. He rules through a mix of charismatic leadership and absolute, bone-chilling fear. There is a disturbing quality to his character that feels all too real. He styles himself in a way that vaguely references Jimmy Savile, a reference that might fly over the heads of some international audiences, but adds a layer of grotesque predation for those in the know. Why has nobody stopped them? Why haven't the infected overwhelmed them as they wander the open countryside? The movie doesn't really answer these logistical questions. We are just asked to accept that Jimmy is a force of nature, a Fruit Loop, who has survived on pure hate and charisma. The narrative engine of the Bone Temple is the collision course between these two forces, Kelson's delusional hope and Jimmy's charismatic nihilism. The conflict ignites when one of the Jimmys spots Kelson dancing with the alpha zombie. To a cult of devil worshippers, this isn't just a weird sight, it is a religious sign. They believe Kelson is the literal incarnation of Satan on Earth. This sets the stage for a confrontation that is less about tactical warfare and more about a clash of ideologies. Meanwhile, Spike, the protagonist of the previous film, is caught in the middle. Captured by the Jimmys, he is offered a spot in the gang if he can kill one of them in hand-to-hand combat. He does, but for the rest of the film, he is largely sidelined. If you came to this movie looking for a continuation of Spike's emotional arc or a resolution with his father, you are going to be disappointed. That guy doesn't even get a mention. This is Kelson and Jimmy's show, and we have to address the casting of Aaron Kelly Mann. While the heavy hitters are elevating the material, Kelly Mann, known to many as the leader of the Flag Smashers in the MCU, struggles to keep up. Playing a tough, intense survivor requires a range that she doesn't quite display here, often reverting to a deer-in-the-headlights look that stands out starkly against the textured performances of Fiennes and O'Connell. It's a minor stumble in an otherwise well-acted piece, but it is noticeable. Let's talk about the visual language. DaCosta was handed a difficult task: follow Danny Boyle. Boyle's visual style is kinetic, digital, and gritty. DaCosta adopts some of this. The framing and editing clearly pay homage to the franchise's roots, but she also brings a confident, artistic flair that is all her own. The cinematography creates a world that is beautiful in its decay. But do not let the word beautiful fool you. This movie is gruesome. If you have a weak stomach, consider this your warning. The first act features torture scenes and gore that are grim even by 28 Days Later standards. There are moments where you will want to look away. It feels like the movie has something to prove early on, establishing that despite the lyrical elements, this is still a hard R horror film. However, the gore isn't just for shock value. It emphasizes the theme of the new generation. The violence isn't coming from the mindless infected, it's coming at the hands of humans who know nothing else. The true horror of the Bone Temple is the realization that the endgame of this apocalypse isn't the extinction of man, but the mutation of man into something worse than the zombies. As we reach the conclusion, we have to address the structure. The Bone Temple suffers slightly from middle chapter syndrome. It feels like an expansion pack. If you took the strong first act of 28 Years Later and combined it with this film, cutting out the fluff, you might have had one singular masterpiece of a movie. Instead, we have two slightly disjointed halves. The ending of this film is abrupt. It ties up loose ends from the previous entry, but swings open a door for a future installment that comes out of nowhere. It's polarizing. Some will find it intriguing, others will find it frustratingly incomplete. But despite these structural flaws, The Bone Temple is a success. It restores faith in the franchise by taking big swings. It doesn't play it safe. It gives us a villain for the ages in Lord Jimmy, a heartbreakingly weird performance by Ralph Fiennes, and a vision of the apocalypse that feels fresh after decades of zombie media. On a rating scale, this is a solid good. It's a suspenseful, horrific, at times surprisingly funny, and visually arresting film. It proves that DaCosta is a formidable director when freed from the constraints of the Disney machine, and it sets the stage for a finale that, hopefully, can unite the disparate threads of this 28-year saga. If you were put off by the last movie, give this one a shot. It might just surprise you. I just found a new horror flick and I'm off to watch it. If you liked this video, please smash that like button. And for more new content, don't forget to subscribe to Redframe.